All right, so right here, we're gonna be talking a little bit more about what low volume and high intensity training is and what how stress, which is actually gonna be the number one factor to consider when it comes to building muscle. So, all right, I know it's a lot of information here, but basically the like whenever you do strength training, okay, that's what's gonna build your muscle. So I know like a lot of like oftentimes like people like there's like two different ideologies. There's one from Mike Mentzer. Okay, he was a bodybuilder who he trained 3 days a week, like a total of 3 hours a week, just 3 hours a week. And he had Arnold, he trained like 6 days a week, 2 hours to 4 hours each session. It was very high volume, very high intensity. Now they both got really good results, but it's the point is that at some point the purpose of strength training is that you tear down muscle, you put like a stress stimulus on your body, and that after you've reached that stimulus to fatigue ratio that your body can do, it hits a threshold where anything if you do any more, it's ineffective. So, it doesn't make sense why you'd want to train like six, 6 days a week if your schedule doesn't even allow it. So definitely making sure that when it comes to like optimal training, you want to make to get the biggest bang for your buck. It needs to be time efficient. And because ultimately, ironically, if when you have more recovery, you're going to be building muscle a lot faster. Lots of studies have showed that anytime you have more recovery, your stress levels they go down because when you wake up, your cortisol is already high. And now cortisol, it's needed, but you don't need it like it's not a if you have too much of it, it ends up putting your body in stress, increasing your body fat, and then your muscle can't grow under stress, under immense like long delayed stress. Think about the marathon runner versus the person who lifts weights maybe like Mike Mentzer, he only lifted weights 3 times a week. All right, the marathon runner, there's a high stress. It's a lot of volume of blood that goes to his muscles for a long, extended period of time, multiple days a week, versus the strength, the bodybuilder who it just focuses on. They take the endurance component out of strength training. All right. Now, the that's another thing too is when it comes to your training, like when you're in the gym, you have a few factors to consider. I'll make this one real quick, is that you guys need to consider how many reps do I have left in reserve. So ideally, if you know in your head you push yourself to no reps in reserve, that's because you hit failure or you hit mechanical failure, meaning like you couldn't do the exercise with perfect form. So, and that's perfect. That's where you want to be at, you know. And because like mechanical failure, not necessarily like absolute failure where you're spamming the muscle so much, because then like while you might get the benefit, this is like the only time where you would push yourself with that much volume is if like maybe you're at the end of a cut and you're just trying like you don't have enough strength to lift heavier per se. So instead, you do supersets, you do drop sets, you add a lot of this excess volume because you're at the end of your cut. Like you're going to be getting a lot more fuel later. But this is this isn't something that you would do if you're in the at the beginning of the cut or even at the if you're bulking, if your goal is to build muscle. Because what ends up happening is all that extra like if you're going to failure on like the first like 2 sets, right? And you have this third set here that's sitting, like there's no point. You killed all the glycogen that you had was already used up, and you could have went heavier. But the point is that you need to prioritize the weight over the reps and the sets. That's what I want you guys to take a note down from here is that you want to prioritize the weight over the sets and reps because that's going to get you faster results in a shorter period of time. Like, would you rather try to hit a PR, like a 10 rep PR, or consistently try to hit a 5 rep PR? Because if you're trying to work within the 10 rep range versus the 5 rep range, the 10 rep range, you have two factors to consider. Can I lift heavier in the 10 rep range? And can I hit all 10 reps? and that progressively overloads, it compounds with the more reps you have to do. So that's why like if you really want to get down to the nitty-gritty science of it, you're gonna be doing a lot better focusing on like 5 to 6 reps, and hitting and also knowing like what your PRs are, which is why like in the bodybuilding community, the weightlifting community, while your goal isn't necessarily to be a bodybuilder unless you're Patrick, but the point is that you still can learn from these concepts because you can save yourself so much time. You save yourself a lot of, you actually can look different at the end of your phase because if you're training with a lot of junk volume, you end up putting a lot of the same blood flow that your body's already used to. But if you've touched a weight you've never touched before in your entire life, then suddenly you reach a new height, you've crossed a plateau, and you know for sure that you're actually making progress. All right. And that's another thing too, is that so if you have a pen and paper, recovery is key. So this is going to be one thing too, is if you let's say like you're on a 5 day split, all right, because I know some of you guys are. If there is a point where, let's say you have a 5 day split and the next week you're not even fully recovered, you can do one of two things. A, take a deload week. All right. And that deload week, I recommend you do it once at the beginning of the week or at the beginning of the month, where you're going to drop the weight to give your body enough time to recover. You're just getting blood flow to the muscle. You're just giving yourself enough time to recover. Okay. Or you can also take an extra rest day and then get back onto it the next. Your schedule doesn't always have to be Monday through Friday or, Monday through Thursday. It could also be like on a lapping schedule where let's say you're doing like 4 day split, Monday through Thursday, rest 2 days, Monday through Thursday, or the next, let's see, Thursday, Friday, Saturday through Wednesday, and you can do a lapping schedule, giving yourself that way you can train, you can recover, you can prioritize recovery, and you're listening to your body during that whole time. All right. So, and I know like I've said this before to you guys, is cortisol, that's the number one stress hormone. That's like mainly like where your body gets its stress, but it also is your adrenaline hormone. So like when you wake up, you like you have cortisol, and you need cortisol for a lot of other things. But what happens is that when you have high cortisol, that's going to suppress your testosterone and IGF-1. So those are the primary hormones responsible for muscle growth, and without those, like that's gonna pretty much make you work harder than what you really need to. And ultimately, like if you're, that's another thing too, is I've noticed with a lot of people who when they start their getting into fitness, they prioritize the gym over their nutrition because the gym is like it's a lot easier to do an act like it's usually the things that you avoid that is the bottleneck of where your progress is at. All right. It might not be the flashiest thing to track your macros, go on your phone and like, but it's only 60 seconds. Like if you actually put a timer on it, a separate timer, and then you go 60 seconds, let me log like this food, 5 ounces of rice, 5 ounces of chicken, 5 ounces of beans, 3 ounces of sweet potatoes. Okay, cool. Boom, I'm done. Awesome. Or you could even save it as a favorite and just take a picture, log it, boom, 30 seconds. But that 30 seconds can, consistently every day could make a huge difference in your progress. So you just have to be able to reframe your mindset when it comes to tracking food because that needs to be the priority over because if you have time to go to the gym like 5 days a week, but you're not meeting those nutrition goals, your recovery, like let's say you're getting a consistent 5 hours of sleep, that ends up being the bottleneck right there. So that being said, um, the like I know like a lot of this might be a little bit complicated, but I want you guys to understand that the like whenever you do work out, you're breaking like your body's releasing nitrogen in the bloodstream. So that's gonna really open up your blood vessels. It's trying to bring as much blood into a muscle to where it creates little micro tears. Okay. And then when you do if you're training for extended periods of time, at some point your cortisol does go up. And that's when, that's going to block your muscle growth signal. That's why like working out for an hour, sometimes even 30 minutes is a lot more effective. It just depends on what your body is capable of doing. If you're used to, like for someone who has a lot more muscle, they probably can handle more volume because they have more blood that can enter the muscle. That's just simple science or simple math. But if you don't have a whole lot of muscle, you're like new into it, you need to take the endurance component out of strength training and just focus on lifting heavier. That's going to be the uh, number one case of that. But that being said, there's also other things, right? Like there's stress outside of training. There's stress like in your day-to-day life. That could be taken into account. And I'm going to tell you one thing too is that stress is a very real, like it sounds like really was this the only thing that was like stopping me from hitting my goals and from shredding more body fat, from building more muscle? Yes, like you'd be very surprised if you can't get your stress under management. Like that alone, like your body can actually get to where it attacks you, right? Like there's a lot of people who struggle with like for example, like alopecia, right? Like if like their body is literally attacking them just from stress. Like a lot of that is caused just because of stress, you know? Your body and you could literally your cells die. Like if you can lose hair from stress. You can bald from stress. You know, you could there's different diseases that your body will allow just because you have more stress. So there's a couple things you can do that can mitigate that. All right, some supplements, right? There's of course you can sleep, you can minimize junk volume. You can, if you take caffeine, you can reduce the caffeine because it does increase cortisol. If there's actually one of the supplements that I do recommend is ashwagandha. Patrick, you already know about that. It's one of the only things that naturally can actually make a difference in your cortisol levels. That's drug free, and it's best and ideal to take it during a short period, during short periods of time, 4 to 6 weeks, because at the end of the day, you do need some cortisol to get your heart rate up to keep you alert because it's your adrenaline. So that's just going to help with overall energy just a little bit. But during like times where, especially if you're training like 5 days a week, or if you notice that your body's not recovering fast enough, it's the perfect time to introduce that ashwagandha. If you need information about it, let me know. But this is where like if you're someone who has like a busy schedule, or like you can do this is like an example of like what a split could look like, where you do like an upper lower, on like the anterior side on Monday, Tuesday. Okay. And then on Thursday, Saturday, you can do, upper lower on the posterior chain. You could you don't have to have it one after another, consistently Monday, Tuesday, like on these dates. You can also have it rotating. But given that you at least have a rest day in between those 2 days, it all depends. Like if you're on a 4 or 5 day split, you can still get away with it. Depending on if you are like if you have enough muscle to where you can recover faster, and if your recovery is optimal, then you won't have to worry about this at all. But the point is, the main three biggest takeaways I want you guys to take away from this training is that you want to prioritize intensity over volume, so more weight than less volume overall, especially when it comes to building muscle long term. Like your long term training ideology needs to be adopted to this because it's going to save you time. It's going to save you a lot of stress, and you'll be able to actually make a difference and make progress, whether you're trying to get stronger, look better, feel better. And then, of course, minimizing any outside stress. And then just being consistent with like 3 to 4 days, even if 3 to 4 day sessions per week, even if you're just like, even if your goal is to bodybuild, right? Like you'd be very surprised. You could actually do a lot better with training less, given that you're consistently hitting PRs. If you haven't hit a PR with, every workout that you're doing, and, it's either because of one of two things, or actually one of three things. Number one is your recovery. If it's not your recovery, then it's your nutrition. And if it's not your nutrition, then it's just your intensity, like how hard you actually are pushing yourself. Okay? And which, in that case, you just have to be lifting heavier. You just have to like tell yourself and just do it. Don't think about it. Just do it and put the weight on. That being said, do we got any other questions?